But anyway, this is Buddhism without rebirth, nihilism with the happy face. This is in an analysis, do I know from when? This is 2024 by Calvin Baker. And as always, my first time reading it, I am not endorsing it. We are evaluating. Sometimes we've read things we don't like, and we say why. Sometimes we read things we like. And at the end, there's a review system. And if you're here, you get to use emotes, spam some emotes in chat, and that gets compiled into a review. It's like kind of an emote review. So as always, feel free to ask questions. I will do my best to explain it, but it is my first time reading this as well. So here we go. Introduction. One day while I was staying at a Buddhist monastery, a monk remarked to me that, quote, without belief in rebirth, Buddhism is nihilism with a happy face, end quote. So the monastery will remain unnamed. So that's interesting. So they're like, I'm not even going to name who said this because maybe they'll get in trouble, but who knows? Writing in a similar vein, Westerhoff contends that, quote, the endeavor of naturalizing Buddhism is fundamentally flawed, end quote, because on the naturalist assumption, which rule out rebirth, one can achieve the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice, the cessation of suffering, by killing oneself. The thought behind these and similar worries appears to be the following. Buddhism is, in some sense, to be processified, pessimistic about our existence. Moreover, if there is no round of rebirth from which to free anyone, including oneself, then we lack the chief instrumental reason identified in the Buddhist tradition to remain alive, not to mention to live virtuously. That doing so is necessary to secure liberation. Things are looking bleak. If life is suffering and we don't have future rebirths to worry about, why carry on living, let alone perpetuate humanity? Yeah, so this is like not only anti-natalism, it's like anti-even living any more time at all. If life as we know it is all suffering, why bother? If you're just not going to come back to the same story next. Like, why bother? Just be done with it and end your life and go away. I mean, that is one of the positions of all time. One way to cash out the thought that Buddhism is pessimistic is to read it as wedded to the view that any mental state is characterized by dukkha. Am I saying that? I don't know how to say dukkha right. Dukkha. Yeah. Unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction, unease, suffering is on balance bad. Call this the pessimistic assumption. Alternatively, one might read Buddhism as committed to the claim that the dukkha is unawakened lives invariably outweighs whatever goods are also present, so that all unawakened lives are bad for the beings who lead them. Yeah, so it's not just bad, but like there is some good sometimes, but you're still mostly bad. So we've got the all bad or some good, but it's outweighed by bad. Call this the pessimistic conclusion. Author argues that Buddhists need not accept either the pessimistic assumption or the pessimistic conclusion. The paper proceeds as follows. Section 2 motivates the worry that Buddhism is pessimistic. Section 3 tackles the pessimistic assumption and the pessimistic conclusion in turn. The argument will be that the negation of each is consistent with core Buddhist evaluative commitments, including the first noble truth. Okay, so far so good. The idea that life is suffering is, very classically Buddhist, but also recognizable in other areas. And the thing that keeps you from just like ending it all in Buddhism is that you don't actually end anything. You just go back to, you get rebirth. So whereas there's no hell in some sense, or you're living hell in Buddhism because you're in suffering, but like you're not going to kill yourself and go to hell like you might in like a Western tradition. But like, yeah, so if you don't have this, you're not getting out by killing yourself. Well, what else is there? All right. So, 2, the specter of pessimism. Why worry that Buddhism is pessimistic? First and foremost, the first noble truth of Buddhism states that the experience of unawakened beings who haven't attained awakening, so, it doesn't matter. So, attained enlightenment, they're calling in what might be also called enlightenment awakening here, okay, is shot through with dissatisfaction. This is the foundational starting point for the entire Buddhist tradition. And you don't pass go and get $200 either. Yeah, that's right, Vipers. So, what are you going to do? Indeed, dukkha is one of the so-called 3 characteristics of conditioned phenomena. Trilaks Shanya, on which more below. And conditioned phenomena comprise more or less our entire world. Second, canonical Buddhist discourses are replete with dour assessments of unawakened existence. For existence in the fire discourse, the Buddha declares, quote, "Monks, all is burning. The mind is burning. Whatever feeling arises, whether pleasant or painful or neutral, that too is burning." Burning with what? Burning with the fire of craving, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of delusion, burning with birth, aging, and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, I say. Yeah, see, these are very happy thoughts. Everything's like fire and burn. You might also just like interpret this as change. I mean, back in the day, it was more like earth, wind, fire, sort of stuff. And so, but fire represented change. Like, I don't know if like this is necessarily, like the change more also. I don't know what the history is here, but like, yeah, it doesn't sound good because it's like the fire of delusion, the fire of hatred. So it does sound like these are definitely morally problematic things. Okay, to take another example, the phrase "this whole mass of suffering" is used repeatedly throughout early discourses to refer to unawakened existence, and humanity is elsewhere described as being engulfed in sorrow. Third, we find apparently pessimistic assessments of unawakened existence from major Buddhist philosophers. The good right hook, what's up? It's closer to passion or instinct. Okay. Oh yeah. So, again, you're still dealing with these like suffering things, but you're like an instinct or passion that's driving you. All right. Buddha Gosa, the most influential Theravada Buddhist philosopher, urges us to have compassion even for the apparently well-off person, for in reality he is unhappy because he is not exempt from suffering of existence in the realm of causes and conditions. And this is one of those things about other traditions that you don't always get. It's like, you could be rich. And it was like, cool. It's like, all right, a lot of religious people are like, yeah, get rid of all your stuff. But like, you could still be like the rich guy. It's like, he's still got problems. It's like, yes. Hot take. Religion is often quite dramatic. Yeah, super hot take there, Vipers. You should like chill. All right, first part, Shantideva, the most important Mahayana Buddhist philosopher, writes, happiness is scarce. Suffering persists with no effort. And misery is abundant, whereas enjoyment is paltry, like snatches at bits of grass made by a beast as it draws a cart. Finally, we find across many Buddhist sources the idea that from a more awakened perspective, our familiar human world is in fact a sort of hellscape to which disgusted rejection is a fitting reaction. One sutta warns of the, quote, danger, degradation, and corruption of conditioned phenomena, end quote. Correspondingly, one often finds the admonition that it is not, quote, proper for one to seek enjoyment in our world. The good right hook says, sure, central to Buddhism is self-control to the point of dissociation if needed to maintain calm, sort of Vulcan meets Aunt Sally. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely this sort of like stoic-y, you need to not like lose control of yourself thing in the Buddhist tradition as well. So yeah. Okay, instead, quote, the stream of tears that we have shed as we roamed and wandered through samsara, the round of rebirth, is more than the water in the four great oceans. It is enough to experience revulsion toward all formations, enough to become dispassionate toward them, enough to be liberated from them. Yeah, and so as Good Right Hook was saying, you're getting dispassionate towards all the things. So yeah. Perhaps most vividly, Shantideva challenges us, quote, you were horrified when you saw a few corpses in the charnel ground, yet you delight in your village, which is a charnel ground thronging with moving corpses, end quote. Thus the specter of Buddhist pessimism looms. And yeah, and they've got a little quote here, as it did for Nietzsche on the genealogy of morals. So yeah, they're even throwing in like, this is not unique to Buddhist thought, although I mean, Nietzsche is, 150 years ago, and this stuff is like thousands of years ago. Like, when was Buddha? A long time. Kaudiu, how you doing? What's going on? What are we talking about? We are thinking about, is Buddhism without rebirth nihilism with a happy face? So it's just like, what's going on in Buddhism, since Buddhism really says suffering is just prevalent. So if you don't actually think you're going to be reborn like most people do nowadays, most people don't believe in rebirth, then what's keeping you, like, what's going on there? Unstupefied. How long have I been a firefighter? Not long at all. What's up, DCI? Good Fight Hook says, turns out life has mostly sucked as long as there has been life made of meat in a world of teeth and fire. Yeah, I mean, things are rough. Things are very rough out there. You got hot snakes. Is that like hot takes, but like snakier? But yeah. Things have been very hard for a long time. Everyone always says, oh, you'd wish to be in like different times or whatever places. I don't care what time or place you are. You just want to be one of the very rich people. Like, I just want to just have a good life or have the chance at it. Now, of course, Buddhism famously started from the Buddha, who started off as a very rich person and realized it was not sufficient for what he was looking for in his life. But still, like, at least he got to experience that. You got hot snakes and a bubble gut. Sounds exciting. Sounds like a song or something. Okay, 3. Against Buddhist pessimism. 3.1. Against the pessimistic assumption. According to the pessimistic assumption, if a mental state is dukkha, then it is on balance bad. So yeah, if you have a mental state of anxiety in the world, that's kind of how it is. We exist in this world in a state of suffering. Okay, by on balance bad, the author means that it is worth not having, other things being equal. It detracts from our welfare, which is to say, makes our lives go worse. It's bad news for us if the pessimistic assumption is true, for per the first noble truth, all unawakened experience is dukkha to some extent. To assess the pessimistic assumption, then we need a clear understanding of what Buddhists mean by dukkha. Okay, I have a question here already about the way they're phrasing this. So if we're in suffering, then it's making us feel worse. That seems a little bit odd. I'd say I'm suffering because the world sucks, but it's also acting as a cause here. It detracts from our welfare, and I'm not entirely sure about this formulation. It's like, yeah, it's something that we are doing to ourselves here. Okay. Unstupefied, to have and not to choose, is always better than want without having. Yeah, I mean, the Buddha would disagree. Like, he had everything when he was younger and decided it was not what he wanted. And so he left his, his like wealthy household to go and, out into the world to see if there was more to it. So it's like, yeah, you may be right, but at least in this discussion, the Buddha disagrees with you. So it's like, yeah, unstupefied, sure, but there are other opinions. The Good Fight Hook says, to my knowledge, there are no cultures that don't have at least the mention of suicide. Noping out is a recurring thing in humans everywhere, and every when. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, like, people are people, and so it's going to happen. Sorry to hear you. Like, yeah, it's nothing out of the ordinary happens. Yeah. Super said, but he had the option to decide he didn't want that. Yeah. He did, like, that is part of the issue, is like, you still have some agency in these philosophies. And I think that's very important in a lot of ethical philosophies, that you do have some agency, you still get to make choices about stuff. And so that's right. Like, that's absolutely right. And I don't know what the Buddha wanted as far as that. He had the option to decide he didn't want that. I don't know what he wanted, but he didn't want what he had. That's what we do know. Wittgenstein Buddha handshake. Well, I mean, you can go ask an AI to do that right now. The Good Fight Hook says, our prince realized that the wealth was a burden, not enlightenment. Yes. Questions from DCI. What type of pizza would Buddha have me? The Buddha would have whatever the Buddha would want. I assume the Buddha would have a meatless pie, so maybe just cheese. But I think the Buddha was vegetarian. I don't know. What's the middle path? What's a very middle path pizza? Yeah, I would assume the Buddha would be very happy with standard pizza. Like, there's nothing too fancy about it. You just maybe a little sprinkles of some spice on there. I don't know. That's a good question, though, DCI. I'd have to think about that one. So enlightenment is the Meghan Markle of understanding. Vipers, as usual, is on point. That is correct. The Meghan Markle. DCI says one with everything. Yeah. Brumts. All right. Upside down Sicilian. I'm dying. All right. Boom. There are 3 canonical varieties of dukkha. I draw heavily on Harris and Garfield for exposition. I've heard the name Garfield in this field before. I don't know Harris. Garfield is, I think, a big name in the expositions. You were thinking so hard about it? Yes, I know. I got set up. What are you going to do? Isn't life suffering? This is just a demonstration. He likes lasagna. Oh, I mean, that's Garfield, yes. The cat, but also the Buddha, I thought, as well, Luminance. The first type of dukkha, suffering due to pain, occurs when we react to a painful sensation with aversion. This is familiar to us all. We usually want to make pain stop or otherwise escape it. The second type of dukkha, dissatisfaction due to change, arises when something that we like or are attached to changes in a way that we don't like, including by ceasing to exist. This can happen in trivial cases, as when we finished the last bite of a tasty meal, or in serious cases, as when a loved one passes away. Sometimes the dissatisfaction due to a change is also associated with the ostensibly unsatisfiable nature of the craving, thirsting, that according to Buddhist philosophy burns at the heart of the unawakened mind, on which more below. So like the thirst trapping is bad, apparently, according to Buddhism. That's so strange. Finally, the third type of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness due to being conditioned, pertains to the fact that our entire existence, along with everything we care about, is subject to a host of causal factors over which we have relatively little agental control. In particular, we, alongside everyone we know and love, will eventually succumb to old age, sickness, and death, and as modern additions to the list, our entire universe will succumb to a high entropy heat death, or maybe it will, will flatten out into like the cold. That we know all this and know further that there's not a damn thing we can do about it is held to give rise to a pervasive background sense of frustration and despair, even if these sentiments aren't always at the forefront of our minds, or at a minimum, to establish that final and lasting happiness cannot be located in our world, dependent as it is on causes and conditions outside of our control. Yeah, so this is fair. So it's like you can be in physical pain, you can have stuff that you like and that you don't have right now, or you could also have been trained to want certain things, even if they don't matter, and then in the training you sort of gain wants that you really don't need, and that's causing you further pain. Yep. Okay, what the first noble truth says then is that these 3 types of dukkha in widely varying degrees of subtlety permeate our mental lives. Notice, and here is a crucial claim, that this does not entail that our lives are on balance bad, that it would have been better for us never to have been born, or anything else in this vicinity. That's because the fact that a given discrete experience is tainted by some form of dukkha to some non-zero degree does not entail anything about whether that experience is good or bad for us. Rather, it simply tells us that experience is, in some way, non-ideal. The inference from experience E is subject to some form of dukkha to E is all things considered bad is a further axiological inference that I claim is not forced on us by anything in Buddhism, including the first noble truth. Okay, so you always have suffering, but your suffering isn't that bad. You should be happy. Like, there's nothing in Buddhism that says your suffering is actually making you miserable or your life should be miserable with that amount of suffering. That's going to be kind of a hard sell, seeing as the focus on suffering is so pervasive in Buddhism. Like, that's the number one thing. And it's like, if everything was so good anyway, why are they wasting so much text on suffering if it's not a big deal? Unstupefied said, with the second type of pain, where do you think the line is drawn between desires and hope, or is hope pain as well? Well, any attachment, Unstupefied, I think counts as a potential source of suffering. So yeah, the hope as in an attachment to a better idea, a better world, some sort of concept that things will be better than they are now, that is an attachment to an ideal life or possibility that I think would be, that attachment would then be a cause of suffering in your life, and that would be a problem. You would not want to be holding on to the hope that things could be better in the future, because what you should be doing is gaining enlightenment now. Okay. So, yeah. Allow the author to elaborate. It is plausible, and again, I grant that episodes of suffering due to pain and grosser episodes of dissatisfaction due to change are bad. To reiterate, by bad I mean that it's better not to have those experiences, other things being equal, that is, screening off any salutary instrumental effects they may have and considering them in and of themselves. But consider, quote, lake walk. You are walking along a forest path next to a lake. Looking up, you see a sunlight streaming down to the water through a break in the clouds. As you take in the view, you feel aesthetically uplifted and grateful to be alive. End quote. On the Buddhist view of things, during lake walk, dukkha may be in play in one way and is definitely in play in another. Firstly, on a subtle level, possibly one that you are not consciously attending to. As you enjoy the view, your mind may be craving something more, something even better. Couldn't the colors be a little brighter, the bird song a little sweeter? This is the unsatisfiable nature of craving alluded to above. No matter how much you enjoy the view, some part of you may be left unsatisfied. Secondly, this discrete experience and of course your existential situation as a whole remain out of your control. You can't make the view last, you can't get more aesthetic or hedonic value from it through an act of will, and sadly, no matter how sublime the view, it remains that everything you love and care about is going to die or otherwise cease to exist one day. In these respects, your existence is ultimately unsatisfying, that is, it is dukkha. What's more, it bears the other two characteristics of conditioned phenomena as well. It is marked by impermanence and devoid of self. There, and you get the paragraph that answers your question. There we go. But that is also, I've mentioned this quite often on stream, it's the mark of a good writer in philosophy, that you start coming up with questions that they then answer, that they are actually getting you to think along the lines that they want you to be thinking about. So you're thinking about the topic in the way they want, and then they tell you this stuff and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like, it happens sometimes in these papers where people start asking questions and then the author just like, it's all the answers that you're looking for because they set it up that way. Don't think that's by chance. Think that's definitely by skill. Decisive question. Does the fact that lake walk experience is impermanent, not had by a self, and ultimately unsatisfying in the manner just described mean that it's bad? Author says, I submit that the answer is no, and that Buddhists may answer in the negative as well. I'll argue for these claims in order, beginning with the mundane observation that the fact that something is bad in some respects does not imply that it is bad overall. To illustrate, consider a book that is hailed as a literary masterpiece, but that contains one and only one typo. The typo is a bad-making feature of the book, but the book is still aesthetically good overall. The corresponding thought when it comes to dukkha is that the fact that an experience is tainted to some degree by some form of dukkha does not imply that it is bad overall. We can agree that dukkha is a bad-making feature of experience, but also hold that experiences can have good-making features, such as their being pleasurable, subjectively meaningful, and so on. Now, what is this pleasurable that they're talking about right here? Because wouldn't this all be some sort of distraction from enlightenment or the awakening or whatever they're calling it here? Like, wouldn't this be some sort of worldly pleasure that wasn't the Buddha teaching us to ignore? It seems a little bit strange that we're saying, well, the Buddhists is so happy with this worldly delight. That seems odd as far as I understand the position of, like, you know, escaping this reality. But maybe I don't understand Buddhism very well. That's also very true. Author continues, it will then be left open whether the good-making feature of an experience outweighs its bad-making features, such that the experience is on balance good. This brings to light an important further point, namely that pessimistic assumption depends on one of two claims. Either that there simply aren't any good-making features of experience, that was what I was saying, or that whatever good-making features there may be can never outweigh dukkha. To the extent that we can be confident in any of our evaluative judgments, we can be confident that both of these claims are false. It is clear from our everyday experience that some aspects of experience are good and that these aspects sometimes outweigh the bad ones. As a sanity check, imagine whether you think the best experience of any unawakened human being has ever had. This experience is on balance good, even granting the to the Buddhists that it contains subtle traces of the two different kinds of dukkha. The best experience anyone has ever had. Now, I don't like this. Like I was just saying, the Buddhists have a way of viewing the world. What counts as the best experience for me as someone who is not an experienced Buddhist might not be judged the same way as someone else who is an experienced Buddhist. And this is the conditioned factor that they were talking about earlier. I was conditioned to think that was the best experience, but a lot of times you get older, you realize, that was good, but like it really might have had some problems with it. Things like that. So it's like, I'm not sure that just like whatever I think the best experience is actually good counter evidence to say that it actually was good. You get older, you start to realize that some of that shit that happened when you were younger may have been kind of fucked up. Happens to all of us. Like, you realize some of these stories like I had of like shit I've forgotten from years ago. It's like, that was fun, but like, damn, it was dangerous or stupid shit happened. Yeah. It's like, so I'm not entirely sure this sanity check actually is very sane right here. Like this thing. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, since the pessimistic assumption is both strong and implausible on reflection, the principle of charity gives us pro tanto reasons to avoid imputing it to the Buddhist. So unless there is even greater interpretive force pushing us in the opposite direction, we should favor a reading on which Buddhism is not committed to the pessimistic assumption. I'll now consider two possible grounds for suspecting that Buddhists would reject the preceding reasoning about good and bad making features of experience and argue that each is spurious. Okay, so maybe they're going to counteract what I just said. We'll see. I also had another idea here. Yeah, we'll let it go for now. Okay, firstly, one might point out that Buddhists are skeptical of certain common sense philosophical judgments, both metaphysical and value theoretic. Yeah, this is the obvious thing that I just said. I ain't that clever. And also, like I was saying, the author knew what they were doing when they set this up. Such skepticism arises from the Buddhist view that each of us starts out in a position of massive delusion regarding the nature of reality and the ways to achieve well-being. Why then should we think that the claim that there are good-making features of experience, which are sometimes sufficiently powerful to outweigh its bad-making features, will find much purchased on the Buddhist? Yeah, this is exactly where I was like, well, isn't this an obvious objection that the Buddhist is going to discount the things that I think are good? Author continues, mightn't the Buddhist reply that this confident evaluative judgment is simply the output of a deluded mind, tragically caught up in the misapprehension that it can find lasting happiness in the impermanent, impersonal, and unsatisfying cycle of samsara? So I remember this thing from like, I was in high school or something. You guys remember My So-Called Life? You got, who's a fucking old person here? And what's her name? Claire Danes. Why do I remember her name and not any other names? But Claire Danes is hanging out with her friend, and like they do, like they're in high school or something, and they do something like wildly inappropriate, and they're hanging out, and like she's like freaked out. And the next day, her friend is at school and saying like, "Oh, it was the craziest, best night ever," and Claire's like, "What the fuck? Like that was insane and dangerous and bad." But it's like, yeah, it's like you were having fun in high school, and like some people are excited about like dangerous and fun stuff, and other people are like, oh my god, we almost got like murdered. So it's like, yeah, Baraday, I manifested you. How you doing? What's going on, Baraday? Yeah, if anyone here don't know the Baraday is another PDF streamer like me and Luminance who does philosophy. Baraday is working on the concept of charisma, which seems to have purchased nowadays, about what's going on and how do we think about why do certain people and organizations get like power drawn to them through their charisma. So like, yeah, you're well, what's up? You asked for old people, remember My So-Called Life? Yeah, dude, I'm old too. I'm older than I look. PDF best game, exactly. Hey, Luminance, you have to understand, and Baraday and everyone else, when I got on Twitch, I said I'm going to turn philosophy into a game. I'm going to turn academia into a game. And that's why I'm streaming philosophy, and we rate it, and it's like part of the game here. So yeah, if you guys don't know Baraday, go give him a follow. More philosophy content. I mean, we're talking both Luminance and Baraday are continentals. I'm more analytic, but whatever. It does not matter. So yeah. But yeah. I was gonna say, you want in on that game? Yeah, well, gamify all the things. Language games, game theory, all the fucking games. Everything just is where are we assigning the What values are we assigning the outputs to? And then how do we actually get there? We are the 3 PDF readers on Twitch. Yeah, we are. I know. Tindarios found another guy doing PDFs. I've mentioned this to you before, I think, Luminance. He's actually out in India. He's a professor of philosophy out in India, and he was streaming at, like, time zones that don't work for, the USA. But, like, I was there. I was up, like, at 3 a.m. one night, and I see this guy streaming, like, an icon I didn't recognize. I go in there, and he realizes who I am. He's like, I'm reading PDFs on stream because I saw you do it. I was like, oh, my God, I did this. Your sub badge is the PDF symbol, lol. That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta follow. I don't know if I don't know if he's streamed in forever. I'd have to look him up because I never see him online. Because the only time I saw him online was at like 2:45 in the morning. So yeah, but whatever's. But anyway, yeah. If anyone is interested in more philosophy, Barry Day is another philosopher, and go hit him up. He's fun. He's Australian, so he curses a lot. We like that. I mean, I'm from New York. I curse a lot. But yeah, we're talking samsara, suffering, Buddhism, which is good topics. The philosophers are good. The Buddhists tend to have some excellent philosophers among their ranks. So yeah. Okay, so now we're saying, look, even if you thought you had good times, you had good times under some wacky, fucked up standards. The times you had in high school where you nearly died, you do not ever want to have those again. Why would you do that? That is crazy. So, like, now you know better. And if you learn Buddhism, you know even better not to do that anymore. So why would you think that the things you considered your good times were actually good once you learn what it actually is? Okay. So that's what the question is. Wouldn't you want to learn better? And the author goes, no. Evidence for a more measured perspective can be found in the Kalama Sutta. Here the Buddha clearly presupposes that his unawakened interlocutors are not entirely in the dark when it comes to value. Quote, when you know for yourselves these things are unwholesome, then you should abandon them. Or when you know for yourselves these things are wholesome, these things lead to welfare and happiness, then you should engage in them. Okay, so the Buddha is doing an everyday philosophy sort of thing. Very cool. Cadu says, I had some good times. Yeah, I had some good times too. Darius has done a lot of work in like finding philosophy streamers. I think he just types in philosophy into like the search, and sometimes he finds new people. To be fair, the reason me and Aris found each other was because I read one of his papers on stream. And I used to email all the people. I don't do that anymore. I probably should. But I used to email all the people who I read their papers, and so I read one of his papers a long time ago. Unstupefied says, so you have to experience things to know is that what it's meaning? That's not exactly what it means. I mean, what you said is true, but that's not what exactly is getting said here. What's getting said here is that some of your judgments will be correct. Maybe not all of them, but some of the things that you think are good are good. So some of your experiences you were right about. So you do need to have experiences to know, but it's more than that. It's that on top of having the experiences, your judgments are sometimes correct, and you've already had. You don't need to have Buddhist training to know what's a good experience. You will have already had some of them and will know it. That's what's important here. That you don't actually need to have the training to recognize what's good. Lumen says, oh, that's amazing. I never would have guessed you didn't meet through Twitch. Well, we did meet through Twitch, but it was it was through email. I emailed him. That's what it is. How did his paper do on the emote review? I don't remember. It was a very fucking long time ago. And also, I didn't have the emote review at that point. I've only had the emote review since the 400s. And I've been in his paper is probably in the 200s. You can look him up on my YouTube and get an idea of when it was. I mean, you can look up his name and stuff and search my YouTube for it, and you'll see how long ago it was. It'll look all fucking, room will be different, everything will be different. I may have had a mustache at the time, who knows. But yeah, I think I thought it was okay, if I remember. I think I thought it was okay, but like it was just like, hey, I thought that was alright. That's all I was doing at that point. Okay. So yeah, so the Buddha is saying you will actually understand what the good is sometimes. Okay. These instructions make sense only on the assumption that the unawakened person can sometimes accurately track facts about value. If so, then the claim Buddhists think we're massively deluded, so we shouldn't trust our evaluative intuitions overgeneralizes. You've never gone through my YouTube archives, might be time. So one of the things I plan on doing is I'm trying to get the website for the paper, like the website for the philosophy roulette, what I'm doing right now, up. And then I will try to get metadata about all the stuff I've got on the, that I've reviewed and read over the years from like Phil Papers. That might be hard because like Phil Papers has been dealing with bot attacks. They might not like me downloading mass like data from their website. We'll see. But like, yeah, hopefully in like the next month, I'll get that up and it'll look better. So we'll see what's there. Again, I was not as good at this in the past. I've gotten better over time. Sometimes I was drinking beer during the pandemic, just sitting here getting drunk, reading philosophy. That happens too. But yeah. Who the fuck would attack Phil Papers? That's a great question. I don't know if it's an attack or if it's just more and more bots on the internet, or if it's the new LLMs that everyone's trying to get suck up all the data on the internet for large language models. I suspect a lot of the LLM bots are trying to get as much Phil Papers data as they can, because guess who is talking sensibly in reasonable ways about difficult topics? Philosophers. If you want to have a chat with ChatGPT or any other large language model about Buddhism, and I guarantee you people do, then downloading this kind of paper is going to be critical to the large language model sounding like it knows what the fuck it's talking about when someone asks it about Buddhism. So this is, I think, what's happening is that the bots have gotten worse and the LLM bots are like compounding the problem, because if you ask it like hard questions, you need people who have thought about this a lot, and this is the sort of data right here that you can download and get. Yeah. Oh, it's an MLM bot? Yes, a multi-level marketing one. I know, you were talking about that the other day, which is kind of funny. But so Getting Stabbed, who is an old friend of Aris's, was in chat not that long ago, and Getting Stabbed was like on a pioneering edge using like language models to, market stuff. I remember Getting Stabbed telling that like the bots were getting better and better and they were just getting more and more leads for sales. And I was like, oh, that's crazy, but like, cool, like good stuff. And this was, I think, pre like the explosion of the more recent chat GPTs or whatever. And so I wonder if like Getting Stabbed is out there just deploying bots everywhere and just having like all these like money coming into them. Eminem too, yes. Barry says yes, big into MLMs. That's why I pinged, yeah. Yeah, well, I can't talk after a while, so. Okay, but what the author is saying here is that even the Buddha says people get it right, and that's a good point. If ordinary people didn't get it right, it would be sort of in the position of, again, a Baraday topic, of then you'd have to go to the clergy, you'd have to go to someone who's been studying to actually like interpret what's going on. And a lot of traditions, Buddhism in this case also, says no, the everyday person can figure it out for themselves, and if they have to be able to. And so that's part of the issue. Who knows the shibboleths? Yeah. So again, I go back to My So-Called Life, that scene where Claire Danes' friend is interpreting some very scary, dangerous situation as the most exciting, fun time they have. It's like, well, you're supposed to identify with Claire that it was scary and bad, and you're like, oh my God, what the hell happened? But then you see her friend, and it's just like, well, she doesn't. And but how do you know who's right then? Like, between the two. Still, I mean, the idea is that people figure it out. All right. There is no internal pressure from Buddhism to abandon our evaluative outlook wholesale. Therefore, unless we are presented with a specific reason to doubt it, we can, consistently with Buddhism, retain our belief that certain unawakened experiences are good and worth having for their own sakes. Yeah, so I guess the Buddha would say that like you can figure out how to attain Buddhahood, and those steps along the way, I guess, would be better or good, I guess. Any step that you're getting towards Buddhahood would be a good step, I would assume. One such reason for doubt may be thought to be found in the Magyanadina Sutta, Diya Sutta. There, the Buddha likens the unawakened person who is pursuing sense pleasure to, quote, a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. Just as the leper, though the fire was actually painful to touch, acquired a mistaken perception of it as pleasant, the unawakened person whose faculties are impaired acquires a mistaken perception of a sense of pleasures as pleasant, even though sensual pleasures are actually painful to touch. Yeah, and so this is closer to what I was saying. Scary experience, and some people say, oh, that was great, because they have a misguided view of the world. Yeah, one sec. On a straightforward reading of this passage, which is inconsistent with the author's view, the Buddha is saying that the unawakened are in such an impoverished epistemic state that they mistake painful experiences for pleasurable experiences. Barrett says it's a fine line between pleasure and pain. You've done it once and you can do it again. Yeah, and this is part of the issue, is like you can learn to like bad things and you can get acclimated to bad things. I was on the Daniel Matt stream earlier, and he made the excellent point that familiarity can go a long way. Things can be very bad, but because they're familiar, you kind of like that. You're like, oh, I'm okay. I understand what's going on. That doesn't make it good just because it's familiar. That could be very, very bad. You could be falling into the same bad old habits, and that's terrible. But the familiarity, like that's kind of like you've mistaken the comfort of the familiarity for actually some sort of like real comfort out there, and that's bad. Oh, you're quoting a song you like? Well, I'm quoting the Daniel Matt. We'll give him a shout out because I like the Daniel Matt. He's a fiction writer, and he streams games very slowly and sits around talking with chat. So it's like a just chatting with a few extra steps of him, like, you know, doing Souls bosses every so often. You might catch Prof or Prof somewhere near there. Prof or Prof doesn't love Daniel, but like Daniel's best friend is Nasrallah on Twitch, and so you'll catch me and Prof or Prof in Nasrallah streams. Yeah. Okay. So if you don't know the Daniel Matt, go give the Daniel Matt a follow. He's cool. Okay, on this reading, Lake Walk is actually an experience of my suffering, and you just don't see it that way owing to the great extent of your delusion. Yeah. I'm so deluded. That's right. On my preferred reading, in contrast, the Buddha is not making the apparently self-contradictory statement that pleasure is pain. Rather, he is making two related points. First, to the extent that one's mind is infected with craving, one will never derive full satisfaction from any discrete experience. For deep down, one will always be thirsting for something more, and so there will always be a subtle element of bitterness even in the sweetest experiences. Second, attempting to secure happiness by chasing sense pleasures is dukkha because it results in a cycle of pursuing and experiencing pleasure that never generates any deep or lasting well-being. Now, I want you guys to all recognize that the stream title here is Ignorance is Bliss. So I actually may disagree with this entire premise that there is some latent suffering even when you're having a very pleasurable experience, because you could always be wanting for more. I don't know if that exists all the time. Like, you can be out of like brain space, and so there is no more suffering. There is no more because you just don't have it. You are ignorant of everything else for that period of time. So I may actually disagree on a metaphysical level that there exists the possibility of wanting more in every experience. This seems to be a fundamental point right here. It's that there will always be So there will always be a subtle element of bitterness even in sweet experiences, because deep down, one will always be thirsting for something more. Really? I'm not sure about that. That seems to be discounting certain experiences where I seem to have forgotten all about that suffering bullshit. Now, I may know at different points that, yeah, this ain't gonna last, but when I'm in the throes of those things, it doesn't seem that way. Lumen says, I feel like the meaning of that sense is word order dependent. Ignorance is bliss, and that's a good thing. Bliss is ignorance, and that's a bad thing. Yeah, it might, but the question here is the need for the metaphysical deep down. One will always be thirsting for something more. Really? Will I? I don't know. And what the fuck is this deep down bullshit? Like, you don't know. Don't tell me what I know. Unstupefied. Almost like you enjoyed the lake walk but wish your friend was with you. Yes, Unstupefied, that's exactly right. It could be better. And then, like, you could have also been awakened or enlightened, which would be the ultimate, like, you don't have to suffer anymore. So it's like there's always going to be something that could be a little bit better. And I'm not sure that that nagging worry is always at play. Author never did heroin. Yeah. I mean, that's what people say. It's like, you're on heroin, you have no other worries. It's like, yep. Bowder says, yeah, how unconscious is the thirsting? Never think my next mid-nut. Yeah, it's like certain experiences seem to preclude worrying about other experiences. So it seems like the phenomenology might be a little bit weird there. That they're imparting or saying that you must have some like deep down subconscious thirsting, but it doesn't seem to exist anywhere. Lumen says, all people want X. I'm a person that I want Y. Of course you want Y, because people only say they want Y when deep down they want X. 5-head. Yeah. It's like, well, it's like, what's this? Is this intellectualism? Like, you say this, but like, really, I know what you want. It's like, I don't buy this stuff. Unsupervised said that maybe you not having that nagging worry is part of your enlightenment you have. Perhaps. Like, maybe I am part Buddha and I just get away with not having to be suffering sometimes. Maybe that is fair, but am I like being Buddha for like 10 minutes at a time or for a few seconds at a time and then I lose my Buddhahood? Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. But like, I'm just disagreeing with this one statement right here that I've highlighted, that the author is telling me how I am worried about the world, when I'm saying sometimes I think I'm not worried about the world. Like, I'm just not thinking about it. Like, I can tell you right now, my back hurts a little bit. I can feel my like this chair is kind of old and busted. It doesn't hurt, but like, it's not as comfortable as it might be. I've got a fan on my legs because the lights warm up the room and it's summertime. So it's like, am I perfectly comfortable right now? No. And this is nagging. I can definitely feel my back at the moment. And also, I've been streaming for 2 hours and 20 minutes. I know my brain starts failing soon. And so I'm a little concerned about that also. So I have other things going on. And that's besides me running 3 screens here, like 2 screens, a tablet, mouse, a microphone, stream deck, phone, like all this other stuff. Like, yeah, I'm doing multiple things right now. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I'm just doing one thing and I'm not thinking about other stuff. Yeah. I think Kadir says I was spot on with the brain space thing. Yeah. Well, brain space thing is like my entire life. I'm usually like all focus on one thing. I'm very much a one like full focus sort of person when doing philosophy. So like that really matters to me. It's like when I'm talking to people, I was telling people a few years ago, look, when you're dealing with me, I'm 99.5% full. You're getting the like 0.5% of my brain space left. You're catching me running on fumes at the moment. And that's quite often how I am. So yeah. And Superfied continues, monks always chase enlightenment. No, so it's not consistently being in a state of enlightenment, but you are pursuing it. Yeah, I don't want to speak for monks, of course. Different kinds of monks and religious folks out there. But like, you know, people meditate for like days on end, and like so they're getting very close or whatever it is to their seeking. And it's like, yeah, but like, have they reached full enlightenment? Well, that's apparently very hard, but like they do a good job at it. And so maybe they have some sort of like further insight. I don't know. I'm not one of them, but sure. Yeah. Kairi says he can't just be saying deep down when we know that from neuroscience, like we know what causes worry and what can alleviate it and shit. This is a religious viewpoint in some sense, or a philosophical viewpoint. You can make this kind of move, and not appeal to the science. You can do stuff like that here. But I can argue the philosophical point from the other side. It's like, well, I don't buy that, and I have reasons, as I said, that, I think my brain's just full and it doesn't have space to have like deep down worries because I don't experience them. So it's like, well, I have no experience of that, and then the author could come back, well, you're not fully appreciating your own experience. Okay, but now you're telling me how I feel. It's like, that doesn't always sit right with me. Faraday says experience over science. I'm a philosopher. I default, like, we have to take the evidence of science seriously. But I'm a philosopher. I'm dealing with arguments. That's what I care about. So it's like, yeah, like that's what I do. I'm really, I've said this a million times, I'm an argument person. I care more about arguments than the other stuff. So like, give me a better argument, not your science. Like, your science matters, but I'm looking at the argument. How I am. So yeah, okay. All right, so where were we? All right, importantly, each of these points is consistent with the claim that pleasure is good, is good. Defeasible textual evidence for this claim can be found in the same sutta in the Buddha's description of the divine sensual pleasures as more excellent and sublime than human sensual pleasures, italics added. Yeah, so it's a matter of degree here, the author is pointing out. So yeah, it's more. It's not that it's bad, it's just more. Suggesting that human sensual pleasures are to some extent excellent and sublime, or at any rate good, and in his concession that unawakened beings who pursue sense pleasure find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in it. I will grant, I think the first argument was better, that if we grant that normal people can attain Buddhahood, then we have to be able to correctly identify the good in our lives sometimes, and we can pursue those. And so it's like, that could be on the road to Buddhahood, and it's like, yeah, so there are things that would be pure good even if you don't have it in the complete feature, like you'd get more of it. So maybe it's just limited at first when you get it in your everyday life. Then as you attain more and more enlightenment, you get more and more of the pure pleasure as it goes. And then it's like, well, there's no deep down at that point. You just don't have it all the time. So yeah. So in another sutta, moreover, the Buddha admits, quote, there is gratification in the world, end quote. All right, dialectically, though, I don't need to establish that the Magandhya Sutta says that pleasure is good. I just need to establish that it does not say that each experience we have is on balance bad. I believe I have done so by offering an interpretation of the sutta on which pleasurable experience has certain bad-making features that often go underappreciated in the unawakened mind. This leaves it open whether pleasurable experiences are on the whole bad, or whether instead they are flawed, but sometimes good. Okay, yeah. So at least at this point, they're saying, look, we're on the road to Buddhahood, and killing yourself would get rid of all the bad, but also the good here. And so this is the old, like, measuring your life going now. It's like, well, if everything's bad, maybe you should just start over or just say fuck it. But on the whole, you should at least try to attain enlightenment, because that would be infinitely better. And I actually recently heard a talk that was kind of saying a Pascal's wager attributed to the Buddha, where saying, well, look, enlightenment is like infinitely good, so you should, choose Buddhahood or the Buddhist path, because you would have something that would greatly outweigh all the other options in your life. So it's sort of a Pascal's wager style. You should, be Buddhist, because this will get you into enlightenment, or at least the possibility of infinite pleasure with enlightenment will outweigh all other options. Against the pessimistic conclusion. Perhaps, however, the critique of pleasure-seeking in the Magandhya Sutta clues us into a different pessimistic claim. According to the pessimistic conclusion, dukkha will always outweigh the good over the course of an unawakened life. The pessimistic conclusion is weaker than the pessimistic assumption, because on the former but not the latter, it is possible for a discrete unawakened experience to be good overall. So someone who affirms the pessimistic conclusion can agree that the lake walk is good overall, but will caution that dukkha will come out ahead when we sum it up all the dukkha and all the good that one accrues over an unawakened lifetime. The pessimistic conclusion will thus preserve the core worry at issue, namely that even if an esoteric liberation, for example nirvana, is available to a select few who manage to attain it, life as we, the unawakened, know it is not worth living. Yeah, so even if you have a few good experiences, on the whole, life sucks. So yeah, life sucks, then you die. Okay, before arguing against the pessimistic conclusion, let me say a few things in its favor. So far, the thrust of my argument has been this. The First Noble Truth tells us that our experience has certain bad-making features that present systematically due to our delusion and consequent craving. Sorry, starting to lose it. My brain is going. But this entails neither that each discrete experience we have is on balance bad, nor that our lives on the whole are on balance bad, for the fact that something is bad in some way does not entail that it is bad on balance. Someone who believes that Buddhism is committed to the pessimistic conclusion might respond as follows. The point you make is all well and good as a matter of logic, but it misses the fact that Buddhism is a soteriology. The message of Buddhism is not your life is okay, but we can make it even better. That underestimates the gravity of our situation as it is seen by the Buddhist. The Buddhist holds that suffering and dissatisfaction pervade our lives. That's why we're in need of salvation as opposed to a little self-help. Soteriology. Let's just get the good definition so I don't fuck it up. So this is soteriology is from Savior Preserver, is a study of religious doctrines of salvation. Salvation theory occupies a place of special significance in many religions. In the academic field of religious studies, soteriology is understood by scholars as representing a key theme in a number of different religions, as is often studied in a comparative context, that is comparing various ideas about what salvation is and how it is obtained. Yeah. So it is. These are religions and theories that are trying to rescue us from the suffering we're in, or the world we're in. So yeah. Dumb guy, go Google. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but I mean, I have some idea what some of these words mean sometimes, but it's better just to not fuck it up. Kennedy says, I have a lot of abstract thoughts. I struggle to articulate, and my crazy urge is lacking somewhere. That's normal, Caudio. Writing and getting your thoughts straight is very, very difficult. It's very difficult for everybody. The few people who do it in the history of philosophy are well revered for good reason. Yeah. Well, and the point here is that Buddhism is like religiously trying to get us to nirvana, trying to get us out of this. So if it was just some little bit of annoyance in our life, it would not really, then Buddhism really wouldn't be doing very much. And that doesn't seem like what's going on in Buddhism. Yeah. Okay. In responding to this objection, let me begin by making a concessive remark. I am happy to grant from a Buddhist perspective that the sum total of human welfare from the beginning of our species through the present has been negative. I am even willing to suppose, again from a Buddhist perspective, that total human welfare is in the present is negative. The thought behind these concessions is that Buddhism may place a very high bar on what it takes to lead a life worth living. These claims, together with the ever-looming inevitability of death and the prospect of bad rebirth, account for the urgency of Buddhist soteriology, which I agree is a datum relevant for exegetical purposes. Importantly, though, each of these claims is consistent with the negation of the pessimistic conclusion. For notice that the pessimistic conclusion remains extremely strong despite being weaker than the pessimistic assumption. It says that in any unawakened human life, dukkha will outweigh the good. It scopes not only over all past and present unawakened lives, but over all possible unawakened human lives. Once we have given up the pessimistic assumption, however, it is very difficult to endorse this claim, for denying the pessimistic assumption straightforwardly opens the door to accepting that discrete experiences can on balance be good, and as Buddhists are wont to remind us, whatever arises in experience is dependent on causes and conditions. Given the right causes and conditions, therefore, it is possible for a lifetime of experience to come out on balance good, even if it will necessarily contain a non-trivial amount of dukkha in virtue of being unawakened. Yeah, so you could actually... Oh, and that's it. Wow, alright, that just ends fast. I was like, all right. Okay. Speaking of grunge lyrics, yeah, it's true. Okay, well, that was that. That ended. I thought there'd be another page. Fuck a conclusion make. No, just acknowledgments. That is it. I mean, just jumps right. It's like, that's it. Maybe not, but we get to rate it now. So, if anyone's new here or just your old hat at this, you get to spam some emotes. Tell me how you felt about it. If you thought this was fun and made your brain dance, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do count here. If you thought this was talked about existential or artistic drama, Nog Scream. This is a little existential about what counts as a good life. So I might be giving it a Nog Scream. Nog Oro for deeper ancient ideas. Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog Navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch. And my vote meh. Note, I do calculate an overall score on this, and anything in the green, like up here, will make the overall score go up. Everything in the red will make the score go down, and the meh will actually make everything go towards the middle. So, well, is it overall good? I mean, they definitely were just arguing for the possibility that life is, you can end up on, at the end of your life, to have a better life than not. That's all they ended up arguing for, that it is technically possible in Buddhism to end up with a good life. And you know, the original thing in this paper is just nihilism with the happy face. And like, I think that's what Prof is asking. They could have added like a fucking sentence just to say, well, no, because they could have said that. Like, they could have at least said, and the conclusion is, so no, there is actually a way that you could have a good life that has meaning, and so without rebirth. So it's possible. But I felt like they kind of, you're right. I think everyone, like, I was surprised it ended. I was waiting for them to, give the kicker, and they just didn't do it. So it says, like, the last sentence is just, it's possible for a lifetime of experiences to come out on balance good, even if it has some suffering. Okay, that's weak. They could have at least ended it better. There's a little bit disappointing in their writing, because I thought their writing was actually pretty good overall, but their conclusion just was not that well crafted. They could have said it better. So, like, yeah. Give me the is it. Yes, that's right. Like, they didn't do that, which is weird, seeing as how I thought it was generally well written otherwise. K-Par says, Scream, 2 mehs and a yay. Caldio gave it a meh. Baradish says, the fuck was that conclusion again? I blinked and I missed it, bro. Yeah, exactly. It was not a well-written conclusion. Latvian says, a Scream, an Ouroboros, and 2 mehs. Thank you for reading. Thank you for being here, Green Thumb. Feel free to use any of the emotes. Again, the emotes, if you don't see them, they're better TTV emotes. Everyone can use them. If you have like Franker Face or 7Z or whatever, or you can see them below. So you just gotta type in the text, and you get them. Precisely, give me the, yeah, rating was fine, says Barrett. Met and a Scream, and Illumins gave it an Ouroboros. Yeah, thank you all for a rating. Let me see, what am I gonna say at this point? Yep, a Scream. Let's go Nog Scream. Yeah, so you're gonna get 2 Nog Screams and then the mess. Yeah, there we go. Give it 2 Screams, because I felt like this is the sort of area it's in. Yeah, we're going to give it some vote mez now, also. I mean, I don't think they made big claims. They did kind of get to them, but I think they said it poorly. It's like, I'd feel bad about giving it a grapes. I don't think it deserves grapes. I'll give it 2 vote mez. So it's like, I'm kind of with everyone else on this. And maybe it would count as a deeper ancient idea too. But like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. Lemon says, I kind of miss it, so I can't vote too well, but definitely confident that it's dramatic and deep and ancient. Yeah. So it's like, on whole, it's not bad. It's just like, they fell down in like their writing at the end, which is sort of weird criticism for philosophy. Just because they seem like they know what they're doing, and then they didn't kind of get the closing punch. It's like they could have knocked the guy out in boxing, and instead they won on the scorecards, And like, you're like, don't do that. Like, it's just like, if you can win the match, you just win the match. Don't do what you just did by just sort of let it on, like, leave it up to other people to figure out what the other overall point is. Barraday, Buddhism is indeed ancient and deep, but no conclusions. Yeah, that's right. It's like, come on. It's like, they could have, like, they just didn't finish strong, and that's unfortunate. And I've had someone say this about one of my peers. They said, well, your conclusion was kind of weak. I was like, what did I say? Like, what was the response I wanted them? They didn't like my conclusion. That's what it was. It wasn't that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. It was that it wasn't what they were looking for. And I don't think that's what's happening here. Like, we could, because I think both Prof and I think the rest of people chat understood like what was being meant, what they should have said, and it just didn't get said here. It's like, it's not that we're like misunderstanding or it was just like not the right sort of conclusion. It's like, you just had a few more ways to just like round out the paper. To be fair, philosophy, no conclusions, are only questions. Well, I've always said that. The goal of philosophy is to ask better questions. That's what it is. But they didn't even give one of those here either. And so it's like, they didn't do that. That's the problem. All right, so if anyone else wants to get in, 60 seconds. I mean, I feel like maybe it deserves a Ouroboros, so maybe I'll do that. Nagoro. So like, yeah, it wasn't bad though. It was a good paper. It's like, you're at least establishing a baseline for saying, hey, look, Buddhism isn't necessarily pessimistic. Usually it is, but it's not necessarily, and you can, take steps on the road to enlightenment during the course of your life. Even if you don't think there's any afterlife or rebirth, you can at least get somewhere in the course of your life without attaining enlightenment, and that's worth something. And that's not a bad paper as far as Buddhist ethics goes.